passion and determination. And with that, everyone, please welcome. We're here on W.I.L.D, What I Love Doing, sponsored by W.I.L.D Homes and Gardens Magazine, airing on Jess TV, available on Roku TV, 101 TV, NCG Television Network, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, as well as the wildthepodcast.com and www.jessfm.ca. Thank you for anyone who's tuning in. Welcome. Our guest is Anna Svetchnikov, and she's a licensed marriage and family therapist, mental health advocate, and author of numerous therapeutic books. She has appeared on major media networks such as PBS, Fox, ABC, and NBC, where she shares her experience in family therapy and mental wellness. Anna, thank you for taking your time to be here with us. And really, without taking up too much time, I'm going to give you the mic and let you introduce yourself and tell really your compelling story. I feel like what we're discussing is so important to just throw in here. The traumas you sustained and how you got into the field of psychology.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. My name is Anna, and I guess whenever anyone ask me to introduce myself, I'm always trying to think, how do I represent myself, right? We always have different personas. The way we represent ourselves to friends, family, social circles, professional, and I feel like we all have different introductions. The whole news, how do you appear on LinkedIn versus, Facebook, Instagram, or dating profiles. Mm-hmm. I guess for me, I was lucky enough not to be in the field of dating. Online dating, I met my husband back when I was in high school. He was my high school sweetheart.
Oh, wow.
2 years. Yeah, it's been a long time. We've been married.
Oh, congrats. Wow, that is quite the love story. I love that.
So we've been married for 14 years, 3 kids. He promised me a girl 3 times.
Yeah.
Boys can be trusted. So
Are you going to try for a girl again?
I don't think so. I think I'm done. According to research, the chance of me having a girl is only 20%. The next child most likely will be a boy, and I'm okay. I don't want to take my chances. I'm happy to have boys. So I guess where my story started, I was born in Ukraine, Kharkiv, Ukraine, and I moved to the United States in 1999, a long time ago. So I moved to Massachusetts with my mom and dad. And as I told you guys before we joined the show, it's been a long road. I had some difficulties. I had successes, and I guess it's like any story goes. So when I was younger, in my teen years, I almost lost my life 3 times. I was diagnosed with brain tumor. I had surgery. I had a car accident where I was diagnosed with dissociative amnesia, couldn't recognize myself, had no idea how old I was. I was 19 at the time. For some reason, I was thinking it was 33. I don't know why. I didn't know my name. I couldn't recognize anyone. It all came back, but I still have scars, which is fine. And as Diana was asking me if this is something that led me to the field of psychology, yes and no, not necessarily. Maybe kind of the power of suggestion that led me to that field, but initially I went into the STEM field. I was always a math, science, IT girl, and I went into biochemistry as a major in my undergrad. Soon after my first year, I switched to psychology. I took my first college psychology course, not the same experience as high school, but college psychology course, really interesting professor, and she was in love with the field of psychology, so fascinating, and I fell in love with the field as well. I was like, wow, this is really interesting. I really want to learn more about our brain and how everything operates, and as research grow, I really want to research brain to the capacity I can.
Yeah.
So I learned psychology, and then when I was done with my undergrad, I realized you can't really do much with the undergrad. I was like, okay, I guess I have to keep going. So
Yeah, don't you have a psychology degree, Diana?
No, I don't. I just that was my own.
I don't know why I
thing.
thought you
I
did.
took psychology in college, but I didn't pursue it.
I have an
pursue much
undergrad
after
degree,
marriage.
and I couldn't handle it. My first big girl job with it broke my heart. Not this throwing it out there. For some reason, I thought Diana had one too. I don't know. You and I just have had funny conversations that would lead me to believe. So anyway,
I do love psychology.
Me too.
I love the psychology. I love Carl Jung. I love behavioral therapy. I dove deep into it just to heal my own mind because just traditional and the therapist I was seeing, it just wasn't helping because I was always diagnosed with various mental disorders, but I feel like there was something like a bigger thing because there were so many. I had an eating disorder, I had major depression, I had complex post traumatic PTSD, CPTSD. And I know where all that stemmed from, but even before that, once my healing really started progressing, I realized, well, I'm also neurodivergent, and that's just there. Once I really started getting into healing my brain and being honest with myself, that's where I saw it. And then that reversion happened. I stopped calling myself stupid. I stopped calling myself lazy. I started acknowledging that some things are a little bit more difficult, or I get easily distracted. I can't really sit still. I fidget. So I had to embrace those parts of me that I honestly before used to really mute because the main thing I remember in my childhood was the mask that was I have to act normal and I have to be as smart as I can be and just really be that perfect child. That was always the epitome of my upbringing, basically.
Well, again, what's normal? Like, what's normal anyway? That's what, to me, I feel the research, there's so much research continuing to come out, and so we're learning so much. And these old school, like, they could really screw you up. And like our age, Diana, I feel like we still we're in the best age, I think, because we have seen all of this new stuff. The old stuff was very prevalent. We're stuff from the 90s. It was so different. Like, I always think as a kid, like my dreams were to rewrite the DSM, which was like full whatever, like that was like what I used to think because I was just so grossed out by the old, and I'm so like I feel like I'm pretty open minded. So it was like the things that I saw in the mental health world back then. So
it was horrible. Just mental health overall in the 90s, I feel like
it's scary.
It was a bit scary. I had my mental breakdown. I slashed my wrists in my dorm room of my boarding school. My dorm mother found me and they brought me to the emergency room. And there they were basically, well, we need to put you in the hospital. This was a severe suicide attempt, which I acknowledged. But looking back at it, I did have like a little bit of a fear of death. I will say it was more not. I don't know. It was a combination of a lot, I guess. But they put me to Westwood Lodge, and that was literally like a prison. The stuff we experienced there was just the best way I can explain it. If you guys watched the Paris Hilton come out with her story of being sent away to wherever her parents sent her for rehabilitation, it was like that. It was very guards took advantage. It was really like a prison. We didn't really there was no advocacy. The advocacy I see now of what mental health should have been like. What people like Anna are doing. So I appreciate you.
That was a little detour, but I'm sorry. So anyway, yes. So continue.
Well, mental health is an amazing field, right? And again, it has its good sides, bad sides, the ugly sides, unfortunately, right? All of the above. But going back to my story, so I continued my education and I decided to go into the marriage and family therapy. And my thesis for my undergrad was eating disorders. So
Oh,
I did
wow.
a pilot study, yep, and then I was like, okay, I really want to be in the field of eating disorders, and I was like, okay, let me see if I can get a job. So my first job was in eating disorders residential treatment,
Oh,
and
wow.
I worked there. I liked it, but I realized I don't want to work at residential. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
good. I don't want to work in inpatient, good, but I do want to work in family therapy because that was one of the most effective therapy approaches for eating disorder. Because when we would see the girls coming in into eating disorder centers and then they would feel better, go back home, they would come back in a couple of weeks because they'll go back to that cycle that they came
Yeah.
from, and then they would just like restart relapse. So I was like, okay, so I really want to work on family dynamics, and this is something I'm really interested in and fascinated by. So I went to the marriage and family therapy field, and I done a bunch of stuff there. I worked in-home therapy. I worked for the state. I supervised for DCF. So as some people would say, like, I went on the dark side. Well, it's
Oh,
not necessarily true.
no, not necessarily. I think there needs to, anything that government is structured, I think it has that darkness because there's just definitely not enough funding to do
But
what
it has
needs
to
to
be
be done.
devastating. I mean, that's a
And
I would feel there is
yeah,
devastating
to the
within
point
it.
where imagine, because you do need to come and rescue the kids that are being abused, and child abuse is severe. It does affect the mental well-being of the child, and it will stay for you for life. You can't just get rid of it. You can't erase it. You can't pretend it never happened because it's just there. And
And we
for
need these
me
advocates.
personally, that's where the hate came. Like that's where I began to hate that's where I learned it from. Because I was continuously told I'm not good enough. What I'm doing is not worthy of love. It's not worthy of attention. And then my rebellion came in. Because then I'm just fighting against whatever authoritarian, whatever I'm trying to get away, and I don't even know what I'm doing. So that really set me in a failing, flailing type of cycle. And the eating disorder was so like kind of the center of that family dynamic because I was trying to control myself, and then I would binge when I couldn't control myself from not eating, and then I would purge, and unfortunately, I hate throwing up, so I would destroy my stomach by taking a ton of laxatives, and then I would get sick, and then the repetition would start, and that's how I got day to day. That's how I really got through high school.
And it's just that control, right? I mean, I don't even know. There's, I mean, so much to it, but it's a very interesting topic. Delve in.
So,
How,
yeah, go ahead.
how did you feel, I guess, or what was your motivation to really keep going, after even just working in inpatient and so far, and just what was really the core of your motivation and all of that to keep moving forward as now you're pursuing a PhD, so you have a lot of motivation. And I really want to just, before we break really quickly, want to just tap into that.
So I guess my motivation is you will never work a day in your life if you love what you do, right? And I really like what I do. And I just like helping people. I was always a helper growing up. And I don't know, I think it's really rewarding at the end of the day if you know that you helped someone, that you made a difference in someone's life. And I always like to create new things, come up with new ideas and really expand the field. And that was the reason why I went back to PhD. And to be honest, I really did not plan to go to PhD. When the day I graduated with my master's, my husband actually signed me up for some informational sessions for PhD. Like on my graduation day, I started receiving all these calls from different programs. I was like, what's going on? Why are they all calling me? He's like, oh, I actually signed you up so you can get some information and ideas. I was like, what are you doing to me? You have your undergrad and you're trying to push me to PhD. I was like, why do you like it so much?
That's amazing. That's amazing, though. What a good
I really couldn't
husband.
do it. And then I could not go for PhD back then. So I, stayed in the field. I worked. I got my license, and I continued working. So I went back to PhD after 12 years in the field with the license, right, working. And the reason why I went is because that I wanted to continue research, and I really want to learn a little bit more. And I want to see how I can add on to the field. So as a marriage and family therapist, I've been working. Originally, I started working with parenting and a lot of young kids, trauma survivors. Worked with DCF. First I worked for DCF, but then I worked with DCF, supporting the kids. And then I went into, by default, I ended up seeing a lot of couples as a marriage and family therapist. Not a lot of people licensed in Massachusetts, some licensed in Massachusetts and Florida, both. And then it just, people start, reaching out for couples therapy, and more and more people. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll focus on couples. And for couples, as I've seen, main 3 reasons why they break up or have any difficulties in relationships. Number 1, finances. They can't talk about money. Number 2, intimacy. So sex is important. And number 3, it's the tie between parenting, in-laws, and chores. It's really hard to really find a parent to balance with chores. It can add to the end of the relationship.
Imagine if you're used to not having a child when you're together, and then you have the child, and if you didn't have that communication, or if you didn't have that chore structure, it just goes crazy. It just kind of explodes. It's
Oh yes, my husband and we've been together for almost, I think, 14 years. If he's listening, he'll be like, it's actually 15, but somewhere around there. We have a 5-year-old, so we had a good 10, 11-ish years before we had a kid. When I was pregnant, I tried so hard, so it was just this whole thing. When I told him, and when he rides a Harley, like we used to take off and go to the Keys, whenever we went, we lived our lives and had a good time. I said, we're gonna have a kid, like we can't really take the kid out on the Harley and go on like camping trips, like for probably a few years, but I have to look him in the eye and like really say, our lives are a little different now, and of course it's great, but it's still taking time to just acclimate to the chores, all of the little things that you share responsibility. It's interesting. It takes a lot of work. It takes work. That's for sure.
As one of my clients said, relationship, marriage is a full-time job. So, and then with kids, it's the biggest test to any relationship. First child, biggest test. Second, third, not a big deal. You already know what to do, but the first one, that's where it really comes in.
Yeah, I felt that test. I felt it when I had Paulina, and just everything, just the responsibility, the mind shift, everything that happens with having a child is a big switch that kind of goes off and transforms. I was very lucky. I didn't suffer from postpartum. I feel like pregnancy for me just snapped my brain into motivation and just kind of gave me those healing tingles that I really needed to be like, okay, I have to love myself. I have to learn it. I have to feel it. I have to accept it. I just have to go with it.
And be better. Our little mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
That's
it. Yeah. And coming up on W.I.L.D, I do want to continue talking about positive parenting and family therapy with Anna, but I just quickly want to welcome those who are tuning in just now to W.I.L.D, What I Love Doing. The podcast is sponsored by W.I.L.D Homes and Gardens magazine, and we're coming to you live on Jess TV, available through Roku TV, 101 TV, NCG Television Network, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, as well as the wildpodcast.com and www.jessfm.ca. Thank you for tuning in, and we're going to continue the rest of the conversation about positive parenting. And I know, Anna, you mentioned a bit about it, that you really got into it. Can give a little bit more specifics. What positive parenting is to those who are listening who are not aware of it, and how it works, and of course the benefits of it.
So the positive parenting, it's always, coming with, I guess, the best intentions, right? You want to present your best self. Kids are always listening, kids are always watching, and then whenever you wondering, why my child is yelling, screaming, guess what? Maybe they're just mirroring your interactions. Maybe they're just mirroring your responses. Maybe they're just doing exactly what you do. So the whole thing is you just want to make sure that you learn how to be the best version of yourself, which is self-regulate and then co-regulate with your child, right? I really believe in balance of rewards and consequences. So I think that some kind of consequences needs to be, it's just a reflection of real life. Kids need to learn that they need to be responsible for their own actions and be accountable. So, but again, parents also need to learn how to be accountable themselves. So they need to lead by example, and then kids will follow. Also, praise. Praise is important in positive parenting because a lot of kids, they misbehave. Sometimes they struggle for power. But sometimes they struggle for control. But a lot of the times they're just looking for attention. And when they misbehave, they will they'll try to get attention by misbehaving, and they feel like that negative attention is better than no attention. So this is when you need to hyper focus not just to when kids are bad, quote unquote, right, when they're misbehaving. And that's the only way when you give them attention because you expect that they need to be good all the time. You need to consistently pay attention to when they're doing something well, and not just internalize it, but actually say it out loud and say like, hey, I noticed that you've been doing well this. Good job for doing this. And really provide praise. One-on-one time with a child is extremely important. Even 5 minutes will make a huge difference, right? So, showing respect. Sometimes we'll say like, how come my child is not respecting? How come my child is not knocking on the door? But do you knock on the door? Do you show respect to your child? So that's another. Let's see what else. And again, just like talking to a child, it's important because I feel like, especially with the age of technology, everyone's in their own space, technological space, right? They're on the phones, and then we're not paying attention to our surroundings, not to our spouses, not to our children, not to anything else. So this is where we just want to be more present and engaged.
Well, you were talking. I was gonna say. I was wondering, would you say positive parenting is the best approach if your child is neurodivergent or on this ADHD, autism? Would you say that is the best approach, or does it alternate? Is there something
I would say
better more so than the other?
Positive parenting is a good idea regardless. If your child is on the spectrum, or if your child has ADHD, I think the biggest piece is the structure. All kids will benefit from the structure, right? They would want to know what's coming, what to expect, because that's what makes them feel safe. Because some kids may be doing pretty well at school, in the school setting with the structure, but may misbehave at home. Because school provides a structure, and then home you can just be yourself. It's good and bad because you want to make sure that you continue the structure. The consistency is important, right? Because when the child knows that sometimes you respond this way and other times you respond that way, it's not a good idea, right? They need to know that you always try to be consistent.
So how would you recommend for someone to structure I guess themselves really, so their child can follow? What is the best recommendation? What would you say? How would you break it down really step by step? Really
So with parenting, there's a couple things. So I had my own things that the framework that I put into the parenting, and I have the whole behavioral system in place. right? So this is where you use the chores chart, like, or the chart similar to the sticker chart, but like why the sticker chart somewhat works. It works a little bit. I don't think it would change the behavior. It will adjust the behavior for the short period of time, but then it will go back to how it was before. Because when we just provide the reward, the child will soon learn that there's no consequence. It's like the speeding, right? You drive in the road and then you see the sign for not speeding, and then you make your choice. And then if there's no consequences, of course you will speed. If there's no rules, of course you will break the rules because there's no consequences. So this is why we need to set certain rules and structure in the household, right? But it needs to be consistent, because whenever a child breaks the rules and then the parent escalates, parent is coming from the place of anger, and then they escalate the voice and everything, maybe even escalate the consequence that they will not follow through, and that's a problem, because the way child receives it, my mom or dad is angry, and they're saying whatever they're saying, right? So they're not being accountable. Children are not being accountable for their own actions. They see it as parent as being so. And then for you, like when you provide the structure, they know, like, everyone on the same page. Parents know what are the rules and consequences and expectations, and the children know as well. So whenever there's a break of the rule, right? Everyone knows what's coming, right? And children have a choice, and then parent can give the warning and say, like, hey, like, you're raising your voice, you're stomping your feet, please stop. I'm giving you a warning. So that's when the child has a choice to follow or not to follow the rule. And it's up to the child. And then at the end of the day, no blaming game. We just let the child know that you had a choice and you made a certain decision, and now you have to, follow through with the consequence, And again, it could be, with that system, I recommend, like, the points or, something physical, the gems where they can exchange, they earn for, doing chores or, like, good deed, and then they can lose for behaviors.
So those would be the losing something would be the consequence.
That would be the consequence. You can also add the extra consequences as electronics. Usually it's a big consequence for kids.
Oh, yeah.
Again, not random consequence. They know exactly that, like, if they didn't follow through, they will lose. I always recommend to break it in small chunks of, like, maybe 15 minutes. The bigger the behavior, the smaller the chunk of the consequence, because kids will push the boundaries. They push the rules. They want to see how serious you are with the consequence. So you want to make sure that you don't provide a consequence that's too big for you to follow through. If you say, like, week without electronics for a month, I mean, how soon will you give up the rule and say, like, okay, fine, you can have it? Or for the child, is the land of no return. That means that the consequence is too big that they don't care. And we won't get kids to the place of no caring. Also, with positive parenting, the one big thing that I always say is physical force creates physical resistance, right? So don't be physical with kids. You give them a choice for illusion of choice. The way it works, for example, if you try to send them this timeout, you say, like, hey, you made that choice, and now the consequence is the timeout. And usually it's the age. Let's say the child is 7, so it would be 7 minutes. Child is 10, it's 10 minutes. Child is 5, it's 5 minutes, right? And then they need to go to the timeout, to the room, to some safe space where they can calm down. And again, timeout is not really punishment. It's more like you try to self-regulate. And parents can also show that, like, you can, timeout is good for me as well because I need to calm down. So the child goes to the timeout, but a lot of kids, they don't want to go and say, like, nope, I'm not doing it. So at that point, you come up with the choice or illusion of choice. You say, like, okay, you go to timeout for 7 minutes, or your favorite toy, whatever toy they were playing with that evening, will go to the timeout for the whole night. You choose.
Oh, that is a really good one.
Always choose the timeout. They stomp and they're really upset, but they would go to that timeout or that safe space. But the rules of the timeout also need to discuss prior, right? You need to say, like, hey, listen, if you're yelling, if you're screaming, if you're trying to get my attention, it's not a timeout, right? It's not a time failure. You need to stop. Because if they're saying something, you say, like, please stop, don't do this, you're engaging.
Yes.
So you still get your attention, negative attention, absolutely, but you're still engaging. So you just need to let them know that I put the timer on as soon as you stop. And then you have the chance to really think and process and calm down. So for kids with a lot of behaviors, I also set up the box with different tools. And again, you can put different sensory tools. You can put maybe the pictures of the happy memories. You can put, you can also go to the fridge. I like the orange. You put the orange in the freezer, and then whenever you feel dysregulated, you grab the orange and play with that. It helps you to calm down. If you're really, really angry, you take the towel, let the towel twist it, put it in the freezer, and then whenever you're angry, try to untwist it. It's impossible.
That's a good technique.
Oh, good. I'm making mental notes as you're going because these are so good. There's some I just would have never even thought of myself.
Those are such things. Yes. Oh, yes. Well, the timeouts I've learned with a 5-year-old little boy who, he's a boy, like whatever that means. Rough, like, just rough and like accidentally rough, but the timeout is what gets him. And, he, right now, we're homeschooling. And so I told him if we can get through a few weeks, all he wants is, we don't do many, like, he doesn't have a device. We don't do much like TV at all anyway, but he really wants video games. And I'm like, yes, I'll get on some Madden with you. Like that's, so feels a little bit it's totally not bribery, but I don't have anything tangible, but we're talking about it. I told him you have to, we just need a couple weeks because I know it will be the perfect thing to also take away when needed. Like I know, so I know that's but anyway, you're giving me the greatest techniques. You're always the perfect timing,
Well, so that's what I love about doing this show. We get to meet these amazing people and connect with these amazing people that sometimes you wouldn't even have a discussion with because it's like, well, I don't know how to start or what are we even going to talk about? And then you come on the podcast and next thing you know, everything's just unfolding and you're making these strong connections and really unifying. And I think that is so amazing. So for anyone that's tuning in, thank you for watching. For anyone that's just joining us, welcome. And we were just talking about positive parenting, and we will continue talking to Anna here on W.I.L.D, What I Love Doing. The podcast is sponsored by the W.I.L.D Homes and Gardens magazine, and we're coming to you live on Jess TV, which is available through Roku TV, 101 TV, NCG Television Network, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, as well as the wildpodcast.com and www.jessfm.ca. Anna, thank you for your time, and I just really want to dive into your PhD. I like to save the best for last. So we'll have about maybe 15 minutes if you can just take off with the PhD. What got you really into it from therapy? Obviously, you said sex is very important in a relationship. I completely agree. I think it's very valuable. I learned a lot from just about even myself, from what sex used to mean to me, what it means to me today, just two different things. So tell me about your PhD, your thesis. I'm really, really interested and intrigued.
Absolutely. So I'm pursuing my PhD, and why I chose clinical sexology, because usually people say like psychology is like, no, it's clinical sexology. And it's such a small field, and it's a growing field. US is still, I feel like, on that timid side, where Europe is going all the way. There's a lot of research happening in Germany.
I was gonna say Germany. They're quite ahead of everybody.
They know what's going on. They know what's up. Right?
I think so. I think they really embraced and really came out strong after their trauma of the World War and what they inflicted. I think they really embraced themselves, took responsibility, and now they're just really advancing. And even with just how they embrace sex, how they treat it is just so different. I feel like in the U.S. we're still It's still taboo.
Repressed.
Repressed.
I know that sounds terrible.
So the interesting piece about sexology, why I ended up in sexology was as a marriage and family therapist, intimacy is number 2 reason why couples break up, why they have difficulties and why they potentially break up. And by default, and I guess in every single of my couple sessions, they would bring up intimacy, right? And then I was like, okay, might as well, if I do sexology, if I do PhD, I'll do something that they can utilize. Because originally when I was thinking about PhD, I was thinking at organizational psychology, I was thinking about forensic psychology, because I was, my side passion is sexual predators.
Oh,
their minds and trying to prevent it, like, what's going on.
Understanding their brain. I get it. Yes.
Me too. It's so interesting, but that's a whole other. I won't deviate from you here.
But so yeah, that's what. And then when I came across clinical sexology, at first it was a joke, the whole like Halloween costume, the sex doctor, and I was like, oh, and then I was like, maybe it's something I would be interested in. So I did more research, and when I was doing research, I realized that sexology is such a small field that you can do a lot of research and a lot of findings, and you can really add a lot of contributions to the field. And I said, this is something I want to know. And whenever, you usually tell people, they say, so sex, what do you learn about? Is it even a real field? I mean, you just do it, right? You just have sex. What do you need to learn about sex? And it's interesting, right? And
I can only imagine.
You just do it, right? Like Nike says, just do it.
Just do it.
But in reality, there's way more to that. And as Diana was asking me, so what is my thesis? What is my dissertation? So I actually decided to do the doctoral project. And my doctoral project is on desire. So I'm creating the relational desire assessment tool.
Oh, interesting.
So, yep. So what it is, why I was even interested about desire, because I realized that a lot of couples been coming in, especially long-term couples, right? They're talking about diminished desire, right? And it's not just like someone who's in their 50s or 60s, the young couples in their 20s, 5, 6, 7 years into a relationship, they say, I don't feel desire. I don't know, like I have this duty sex with my partner, and this is how it's going to be, right? And a lot of information out there was, good enough sex is good enough, right? Mm-hmm. Or there's responsive desire and spontaneous desire. Spontaneous desire usually it's something that happens in the beginning of the relationship, and then it's really not really the spontaneous desire. It's more like prepared desire when you meet someone and then you go on dates, you're thinking about that partner, you're like desiring that partner, and you're preparing, right? You do your hair and makeup and put the outfit, you do the waxing, whatever you do, the nails, right? You prepare yourself.
The ritual.
Intimacy. So it's spontaneous desire, but is it real? Right? And then responsive desire, but you don't feel desire, but you just start, kissing, making out, and then you have the desire, you have the arousal, and then you have the pleasure and orgasm, hopefully, right? I mean, that's a different story and different discussion. Yeah. But for me, I was like, but what I was interesting because like all the books out there, a lot of research, right? But what they're all saying, it's more like, well, desire diminishes as you are in a relationship. But then I was like, okay, so if it diminishes as, if you're in a relationship, but what about affairs? Why have all these people coming in and then for some reason their desire spikes when there's someone else, someone new? So let me really look into desire. And so I created the framework. And again, one of my part of the research, I'm doing I created the tool assessment tool, but then I'm also doing other parts to that desire to really create the formula for desire.
Oh, I love that.
Cultivate it, and how can we preserve that desire?
Yeah. How can we continue it rather than just have we
And how do you gather your research?
So this is where you always, as evidence-based practice, you go and you need to start with review, right? You need to review everything in the field, what's been out there, and then you create your own model, theory, hypothesis, and then from there you create the parts of like that you want to test, and then get approval from the government to get the study done.
Do you have a hypothesis that you formed already that you're testing?
So this is something, as I said, like this is my new project. I want to dive into it. That's it.
Yes.
I will disclose it as soon as it like has more testing and running. But it's my other things that I've been working on. I think I mentioned to you like when we talked quickly, it's the digital so it's digital intimacy, infidelity, and relationships, right? So I was doing research, and the book that I'm working on right now, so I got a book deal, and I'm working on digital couples therapy. So that's how technology influences our self-perception, right? Our dating, our intimacy, our infidelity, right? So and addictions, right? And again, like when I was really looking into the infidelity, like what's the fine line? Because there are blurred lines with infidelity. They all base what was the infidelity, right? You take off your wedding ring and you get frisky if you have a partner, right? And then, but what's now, right? We have all these people, they go on dating sites when they're married, right? They flirt with people online, they message people, they follow, all this OnlyFans models, right?
The desire they have, and they're putting it out into the technology rather than into the person they've been with.
So this is the diversion of desire. Yep, you divert your desire into something else. But also the whole infidelity, I feel like there's a lot of couples, sometimes there are unspoken rules and expectations, but they're not being communicated, right? And I had a case where, the partner, the wife was totally fine with her husband's pornography use, consumption, and she said, like, yeah, you can do you, whatever it is. But then she came into the room, and she realized that he was watching porn. And she's like, yeah, totally cool. We talked about it. I totally accepted. But then she realized it was not actual porn. It was not the video, but he was actually communicating with with one of the girls online.
Oh,
webcam.
That's right? So that's where these lines are blurred. Like, what is what's okay, what's not okay. So
it's such a different time. And I mean, I feel like such an old woman when I say that, because every generation, I'm sure, has said that, but it is quite, I mean, digital and everything on our cell phones, our smartphones, has just changed the game. Interesting. What an interesting career path.
Just the basics of even how we do research and find things out, and just AI just kind of just taking over and being
what is
great psychic. I don't even know how to embrace it yet myself. I'm still trying to.
It's creepy but fun. Like depending what you're using it for. But I have some friends who tell me their kids, they have like middle school age kids, boys, and none of that matters, and it's hilarious. They're using the chat GPT, to write the papers, and then what they don't even proof them. They're turning them in, and they're like, what is this? Like, I talk to your child every day. So that makes me laugh. Like, that's a funny little thing. Like when we all discovered, I don't know, it reminds me of when we discovered AOL IM. Remember those days, talking with strangers? Who knows? Anyway, I digress, but I wanted to hear before we forget, and maybe we would have forget. But Anna, tell us about, you have a few books, right? Or is it one? I want to go on your website.
So originally I started with kids books. So during COVID, I worked with a lot of kids, and it brought a lot of anxieties, right? And then also we went on telehealth, so it was a different format than in person, especially with kids. How do you engage the child for an hour, right? Like, how can you support the child in this uncertain time? So I used the narrative therapy concept of externalization. That's when you take fear, anger, or anything else and create it into the person, right? So I created this concept of COVID-19, right? I separated it and I gave it a persona. So then, like when it's like something, someone, you know how it looks like, and you know like what are the strengths and weaknesses, and how to overcome, how to fight that COVID-19, how not to be anxious and worried about it. And it's a fun project. I did it with my
That's awesome.
and my mom. So I did the whole awesome team. So my three boys, and the COVID-19 was my mom. So originally I didn't have Illustrator or anything else. I had my camera, so I took photos, and then I created with Photoshop the comic strip, and I made it into the story, and to help and with therapeutic exercises, help to support kids overcome their anxieties and worries around COVID-19. And my mom's name is Vera, so I called it a Corona Vera.
Oh, cute.
Oh, that's brilliant.
How did she feel about all of this? I guess
she loved it. She loved it.
Yes.
She was totally like on board with that. She played with that. So, and then I shared it with my clients. And then they loved it, and they all started creating their own stories and comics, about like how to overcome COVID. And then someone shared it with the newspaper. So the next thing I know, April of 2020, I have like a number of magazines and newspapers calling me, and I had a lot of like interviews and photos taken from far outside of my home. So I would come with my kids, and at that point, I didn't have the book. We just printed out the photos on our printer, of like the characters and like the cover that I created. And then I had an illustrator from Brazil reached out to me, and he said, "I would love to do this book with you." And that was my first book. And then we did the whole series. And then I was really into like the books and kids books. So I did the whole thing of therapy for storytelling. So I utilized different therapy styles, approaches with like cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, narrative therapy, and I created stories and then exercises for kids to follow. So,
and where can we find the kids' book? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So it's on Amazon, but I also have a separate. So it's on my website, Anna, www.annalmft.com. So licensed marriage and family therapist. So annalmft.com or on positiveparentinginitiative.org.
Okay.
So all books are there, and then I did another book on the anxiety for teens. So it's just the book of 50 different exercises for teens, how to overcome anxiety, and the book is named Chill Mode.
Yes, chilled mode. That's the one that caught my eye. Okay. Yep. So that's aimed at teens. That was for teens.
Teens, young adults, yep. And then the newer books are more for clinicians or adults with different things.
Awesome. Tell us your website.
Yes, website.
So the website is Anna, ANNA, at LMFT.com.
Awesome. So what can we expect from you next? I know you're working on a lot of things here. Well, definitely, I can't wait to hear as your research is developing.
Yeah, I want to know the findings. So we'd love to have you back, hopefully.
Absolutely. So I actually have, I also traveled to Japan this year.
Yes, I wanted to bring that up before we concluded. Yes.
So I presented my framework in family therapy. It's tripartite persona, and I guess I can quickly talk about it the way it works.
Yes,
so what I noticed with couples when they would come in, they would say like, "Hey, like we really struggle. It's been 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 years, 20 years, and we really cannot connect, right?" And what I realized that from like all the couples that I've been seeing, that whenever you're single, you create your single persona, right? With your likes, dislikes, things that you do for yourself that fulfill your cup. And then whenever you meet someone, you create additional persona. It's a couple's persona, right? And then you create new likes, dislikes, and the things you do as a couple. So you can't substitute couple's persona or single persona with a couple persona, right? It's additional persona that you need to carry and fulfill. And then when you have kids, you create a third persona, it's a family persona. And then what I realized, the couples who are coming in and struggling, they would fulfill family persona. They would do things as a family. They would go out to eat and do, fun things. They would somewhat fulfill their individual persona, but they would not really fulfill their couple's persona. It was neglected. It was imbalanced, right? And then as a result, it affected other personas, right? And then when you see that, like, if you're not really working on something, right? It's like you go into the gym, you want to be in a great shape, but you don't go to the gym, then you get what you get. So same thing. Like if you don't fulfill that couple's persona, if you don't do anything for the couple's persona, then it struggles and then it's imbalance. So and then I talk about the life stages and all that. So that's I guess separate topic.
But very quickly, what do you recommend to people who are lacking that couple's persona? What are the first?
So the connection, right? So usually when couples come in, it's really imbalanced and dysregulated, and a lot of like they usually, I would say, like in the negative space, right? If you think of like the continuing the spectrum, it's like the negative space, the neutral space, and the positive space. So when they're like really like struggling a lot and fight a lot, they're in that negative space. So before they get into the good space, the positive space where they started as a couple, they just need to be in this neutral space. So I would definitely say they would need to try to plan some fun things together, right? Because what happens with couples, they become transactional, right? They don't really talk, they don't communicate, they don't have fun. They just do the chores, maybe successful to them, maybe not, right? When they stop texting, they just text. It's like, what's for dinner, like, and all that, right? We're gonna take this child to, football practice, and but they don't text anymore. Then say like, hey, babe, I miss you, and all that. So we're not gonna expect them to start texting and being frisky and that, but we need to start somewhere, right? So I always tell them like, hey, listen, let's start with, let's put on your schedule something fun. That's one thing, right? Because if you don't put it, then it's gonna go back in the back burner. It's not gonna happen. It needs to be on a schedule. You need to look forward to something. Number two, you need to try to notice what's been going well, because we try to be hyper focusing in the negative. And then we see all the, like we don't see, we ignore all the good things that are happening, all the chores, all the things that are being done. We only see like that one thing that wasn't done, and we talk about it and we fight about it. So we want to make sure that we try to really focus what's going well and what we're grateful for. Why do we like your partner? Why did you like your partner in the first place, right? And then the third thing I would say, and try to express it to your partner, not just notice it, but say like, hey, thank you for doing this. Try to, like with kids, like you want to make sure that you always notice. And I say like to my, my female clients, I say like, men and boys are simple. It's like kids. They need clear, effective instructions. That's it.
Yeah, they really do. It just simplifies everything so much. And I realized that as I maintained my healing and I continued on the journey, I realized that it wasn't that I was changing. It was just I was reverting to myself. And then I realized that a lot of it in my relationships, I would hide. I would assume what they're thinking. So I would assume that he's thinking this, and then I do that, and then it would spiral, and there was no communication whatsoever, and I'd be assuming this, and he's assuming that, and then it just a full-on argument.
Just tell them what you need. That's it. Just tell them. They can't read your mind. Just tell them. And then the third thing, really quickly, I know we're running out of time, but the third thing is the physical touch, right? Like, how can you expect to get physical with your partner if you don't do anything? If you come home and you're on two opposite sides of the couch on your phones, right? So you need to cultivate, you need to maintain that physical intimacy. So, and again, you don't need to make out, right? All you need to do, just give hugs, kisses sometimes, holding hands, whatever you feel comfortable. You need to start somewhere, right? And the whole, like, there was this research done in the 80s, and out of that research came out of this 8-hug technique. Originally, it came from the foster parents. When they would take the kids in, they would want to love them, but it was really hard for them. So what researchers found that if you give 8 hugs a day, 20 seconds each, the person who is giving and the person who is receiving will receive endorphins, and that creates that bond and love with the person, and you want to spend more time with that person. So I don't expect 8 hugs. Let's start with 1 hug. Start somewhere.
1 to 20 seconds interaction. That's
But hugs are everything. My mother-in-law is the one who told me, she's like, what are you doing? And I was like trying to like not, that wasn't even, I didn't even mean to, it's that like, I feel like I love a hug. Like I've had to, that was a while ago, it's so interesting. I love that 8 and 20 seconds. It has to be that embrace.
And be playful, just give endorphins and just like be playful with your partner. I think that's what we lose, right? The playfulness, the lightness in the relationship. we become
Yeah,
too
the
serious.
playfulness, the child, because the child wants to live, the child is always there, the inner child that wants to play and be loved and love and just have fun. But if you're lacking communication and trust, I find those two are the really the breaking points of any relationship. If those are not, if trust and communication are not intertwined together, I think there's just you can't unmask and you can't be that child you want to be.
Exactly. Exactly.
Anna, thank you so much. I know we ran out of time and I actually could have gone for another hour with you and
I
just
know. I
the
know.
brain. So I hope you can come back and update us with your study. For anyone that was listening, thank you so much. Thank you for Canada for embracing our little podcast. And thank you, Jess TV, for distributing our contact, airing it on all the major social media platforms, including Roku TV, NCG Television Network, and www.jessfm.ca. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night,
Good night.
and
Thank
we'll be in
you.
touch.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.